Welcome to the Thai Expat Daily Show. We are a new commentary news channel, bringing you all the latest stories from Thailand and beyond. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to receive more updates on new content. So let's get into today's top stories. So, the two stories that we're going to focus on today are, firstly, Thailand reinstating the 14-day quarantine for entry into Thailand, and we'll also be touching on the roadmap for reopening of the country starting July 1st with Phuket and what they call the Phuket sandbox model. But let's jump in straight to this whole reinstating the 14-day quarantine. Well, I'm going to call it nonsense. So effective from May 1st, which was 2 days ago, the latest restrictions are to curb the new spread of COVID-19 infections as the country is pressing ahead with the vaccination program. Both of these things are complete BS, by the way. So let me just go through it. So Tourism Authority of Thailand would like to provide the following updates. Effective from May 1st until further notice, Thailand's latest restrictions to curb the new spread of COVID-19 infections are introduced into the country as preparing for the mass vaccination program, which is scheduled to start in June 2021. Interesting. Thailand has already procured 63 million doses. Well, it's ordered 63. It doesn't actually have them. Just so we'll get into that. Well, these vaccines are ordered, but not in their possession. So it's as if it's saying we have an imaginary order waiting to come. The preliminary rollout started since February. Anyway, let's go into the restrictions. The strength in the COVID-19 restrictions, the latest restrictions include reinstating the 14-day quarantine for international arrivals. According to the CCSA, all arrivals who hold certificate of entries issued on or later than May 1st will be required to undergo 14-day quarantine regardless of their nationality. Meanwhile, Thailanders who've obtained their COE issued prior to the 1st of May and arrived before the 6th will be quarantined for 7 or 10 days depending on their vaccination status. Nationwide latest restrictions. So let's just jump into this really quick and just go through the general nonsense of it all. So basically the first thing the government have done to strengthen the COVID restrictions and to curb local transmission is to bizarrely reinstate the 14-day quarantine for international travelers. Now, I have no information, and there is no information to say that any transmission has ever come from anyone who has left quarantine. Zero. There is no science behind this. There is the usual, what I call, a little bit of xenophobia setting in as usual. When there seems to be an outbreak in this country, they have a big meeting, and the first thing they want to focus on is foreigners, because as if we're the issue. The only people responsible for the third wave in this country is the government and the government alone. They are the people responsible, and all the rich hysos who've been hanging out at the girly bars in Tongklor. That's who's responsible, nobody else. The government reacted at a snail's pace to the spread of the virus, and that is what caused it. They went on holidays for a week and then came back and were shocked that there were so many people infected and so many deaths. And that's the truth of what happened. So reinstating the 14 days quarantine is based on no science. To say that people who are fully vaccinated must quarantine for 14 days and also undergo 3 COVID tests during this 14 days, this is absolute bullshit. And I think the majority of people would agree. The Thai government are actually giving out mixed messaging, because basically they want to drive people to vaccinate in the country with Sinovac or AstraZeneca. But yet they're telling people on the other hand they don't believe vaccinations work because we are expecting people coming from abroad with vaccines they have to quarantine. Which is it? Does the vaccine work or doesn't it? If it doesn't work, then don't tell people they have to get vaccinated. If it does work, and you're telling people we need you to get vaccinated, it's the only way forward for the country, then people coming into the country should be, who are fully vaccinated with a certificate of vaccination, should really, the truth is, not have to undergo any quarantine at all. That is the truth. They should be sufficient, should be enough for a COVID test prior, 72 hours, and a COVID test on arrival. That should be more than enough for anybody who's got a vaccination certificate at present. And in the future, it should be anyone with a certificate of vaccination should be freely able to come into the country. And that's the way it should be. But of course, the Thai government, as usual, get it completely the wrong way around. It's not based on any form of science other than, well, this is the first thing we can think of doing to show people how great we are. Well, you're not. There's no science behind this. There's no nothing behind it. And it really makes you wonder the mentality of what's going on in the government right now. I think a lot of people understand that a certain amount of quarantine is necessary. But 14 days for a vaccinated traveller? Have we lost our minds? Is this where we're going in the world? I think it's absolutely craziness. And I'd love to know what you think. I mean, obviously there's people who don't believe anybody should have to quarantine, and then there's other people who say, yes, okay, we have to quarantine. But on the other hand, they've banned flights and people come from India, so they don't need to worry about the Indian strain. There's no Indian strain in most countries around the world, so what are they worried about? There is no evidence of a single person causing infection after they've left quarantine. None. So what is this all about? I don't know. To me, it's smacks of let's subtly blame the foreigner for the third wave by focusing on this at the beginning. That doesn't need to be focused on. 14 days, if you want to increase it for people who are not vaccinated, that's fair enough. But for vaccinated people? In my own country, Ireland, I know they have a system, and it's interesting what they do. So basically, there is no quarantine for anybody who is vaccinated. You can fly into Dublin International Airport and you will not be quarantined. End of story. You have your certificate, you're fine to go through. They have a list then of countries that are on the, what they call the red list or whatever. And if you come from those countries, yes, you have to quarantine for 14 days. So I think you can get out after the 10th if you do a COVID test on the 10th and it's negative. And then there's the other way is if you're coming from a country that's not a red listed country, you can home quarantine for 14 days. And on the 5th day, you can go and get a COVID test. And if you're negative on the 5th day, your quarantine can cease. Now, all these things make common sense. Reduce quarantine for reduced infection and, reducing the dangerousness of it all. But here, this makes no sense for people. And it leads us to the second story, which is the reopening of Phuket on July 1st. Now, according to this article, it's still going ahead. I don't know how, because they have no vaccines at the moment. I don't know how because, well, in order to reopen for international travel into the island of Phuket, for example, you have to give airlines advance notice. They have to take the planes, get the planes ready. I mean, planes have been sitting out in the desert for months. These planes need to be got ready. Crews need to be gotten ready. Ground handling staff need to be prepared. I mean, there's a whole thing. It's not a case that can even be done in a month. I've read it can take up to 3 months for airlines to get back on a route. So, and then, of course, all the procedures for people to get onto the flight and get here. Nothing will be easy with this government. I can tell you they'll make it as difficult as possible for people. But if they want to open on July 1st and they're pressing ahead with the plan, well, putting the quarantine back up is hardly sending out, very positive signals, is it? I mean, businesses are dying in this country. Phuket is like a ghost town of empty for rent and for sale shops. The same with other places in Panya province and Suratani, of course the islands of Koh Samui and Koh Phangan. These places are turning into ghost towns. And nobody seems to have any focus on what's going on. They don't seem to care because it doesn't affect them in Bangkok. And that is the truth of the matter. People will say, well, they can't help every business, blah, blah, blah. But you could have come up with a plan to let people in based on at least being vaccinated over the last couple of months. Make things easier for travel. Now, this new rollout that's meant to happen on July 1st, the Phuket Sandbox. Now, I quite frankly don't know how it's going to work, but I'd be really interested to see how much paperwork they're expecting people to get. I'm presuming there will be still a certificate of entry needed. So you're going to have to get a certificate of entry. You'll probably have to have travel insurance of some sort, which I agree with. Okay, I think anybody going on holidays should have travel insurance. And that's the bottom line. Probably you'll have to apply maybe online. You'll submit your vaccination certificate, your hotel accommodation, and then you have to turn up at the airport 72 hours beforehand. You're probably going to have a COVID-free test and take a test on arrival. And then you'll spend 7 days in Phuket where you can go around and do what you want. And then after 7 days, you will be able to leave the island. So it'll be interesting to see how all that works and whether or not they're actually able to implement it, which I think is going to be quite difficult. I think this could be really aimed at maybe like package holiday people. 2 centers, maybe. Maybe they want to spend a week in Phuket and then they want to go spend a week in Khao Lak, or Samui or somewhere. So they get their 7 days and then after that they are free to travel to the next destination. But who's going to police all this? How will people, there's no checkpoint leaving the island at Tatuchai checkpoint. So how is this all going to work? I don't know. It would be very interesting to see what they're going to do. Again, everything is always so vague here. When the rules and regulations made up, they're just long-winded, they're complicated, and in general, they never work for people. And the problem is the government, the Tourism Association of Thailand, they don't think, right, like hotels have to think. When a hotel is thinking of something, it has to put the customer experience first. But they're trying to woo, let's say, travelers to come back to Thailand. Then you need to put that traveler's experience first and not make it as difficult as possible for them to actually come. Nobody's going to be coming if they have to get the 10 pieces of paperwork all together and start submitting stuff and hoping an embassy get back to them. Nobody's going to do that. What we need is an easy, simple process to it. We will see. I'm not convinced, as I said, but this is life. We will see what goes on, and let's hope, fingers crossed, they get it right, because if the Phuket model works, that will see the opening up on October 1st of Phang Province, Krabi, Surat Thani, including Koh Samui and Koh Phangan, Pattaya, Chiang Mai, and these areas, all which desperately need tourists. The bottom line is that these are all tourist towns and they're dying as each day goes by, and they need something. They need something to boost them right now. I was just in Khao Lak a couple of days ago, and I can tell you 70% of the buildings on the main stretch are for rent or for sale right now. These people are never coming back because they've lost everything. So if the government doesn't do something soon, it's going to be an absolute shit bomb. Excuse my language. So I'm hoping, I'm praying for all those businesses out there that things will change. I'm praying that a little bit of common sense enters into the government's mindset. And I'm praying that everyone out there has a safe day. Stay safe. Stay at home if you can. Remember, wash your hands, and we'll chat tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe this video, and we'll keep the content coming as you like it. Thanks, and take care. Well, that's it for today, and thanks for tuning in. Please subscribe to the channel to receive more content in the future. Have a great day and stay safe.